Let me put it to you this way. Like, for so long, I'm a white person, as you know, and I grew up. I'm 40 years old, and I grew up in a country that my whole life I was told I was a bad guy. My whole life I was told my ancestors did evil. My whole life I was told we killed, we raped, we pillaged, we genocided, we colonized, we did all these things. Yet everybody I knew was like really nice, and that never added up. And then ultimately I started to see that there was a pattern to the people that were criticizing and attacking my people. And I think that for you to sort of like brush, I think it's okay to say, like, let's not hate each other. Like, I'm fine with that. But I think to brush off race is like a fundamental identifying characteristic and thing that people organize around and want to develop communities and nations around is I think a bit naive. We have a history of America. We have race relations here. We see clashes of races and cultures all around the world. And I think the best way really to not hate each other is to not force everybody to try to live together. Like, for example, America was a white country, okay? It was a white country until about 1965. Now, of course, there was always the black minority, and there was issues there, slavery and whatnot, and then the Civil War, Jim Crow and stuff like that. However, I think to some extent, a lot of this stuff was blacks and whites figuring out how to live in the same country and how to keep boundaries and separation between communities so that hatred didn't foster. And now we have this elite, if you will, this globalist, multicultural, financial elite that is running our societies, and they're saying open all your borders. Like, I think the concept is simply just like love everybody. It sounds nice, but in terms of a practical way of running a country, it's not really actually anything. It doesn't really mean anything. So you could say love everybody, but what does that mean? Does that mean we should open the border? Does that mean we should let Mexicans flood into our country and take our jobs and push down our wages, raise the rents on properties in our country? Like, I don't think so. That doesn't help us. Like, on some level, people do form themselves into tribes, nations, races, countries, and white people have done that in the past, and that has now been taken from us. And so we're just simply trying to get it back. So it's not. I think there's an aspect of white nationalism that it is talked about as if it's all about hate, but it's not. It's about giving white men back the nation, something to be proud of, and that will then, that struggle that we make the struggle for our nation, and that struggle builds the kind of character that you're talking about. We build the character to be better men than we would have otherwise been. If you see what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, but what you don't realize is that if real love is where real power is, and if white people had real love, first of all, they never would have lost the country. Secondly, real love, if we had real love, the walls would already be up around the borders. Illegals would not be here. One thing that happened that should not have happened is during the civil rights movement, so-called civil rights movement. And by the way, I grew up in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws. I had to work the cotton fields and help run the plantations and things like that. And but when the civil rights movement started, one of the biggest mistakes they made was to force integration.
Yeah.
They should not have forced busing. They should not have had force white people to let black people live in their communities. You can't make someone love you. You have to love a person voluntarily. And they tried to make, even though all white people were not against black folks, it was really, Jim Crow law was the government that was created by the Democratic Party. And they wanted to keep the people separate. They wanted to control the people. It wasn't all white people. Prior to the civil rights movement, normal black people were happy living where they were living, doing what they were doing, creating their own communities. We were taught not to hate anyone, that there's good and bad in all societies. and that we should treat people the way we would like to be treated. They were not trying to live in white communities, and they didn't think there was anything wrong with living where, in your own community. It's only when the civil rights movement started that they started pushing those ideas and forcing white people to accept people into their community where they were not ready for. Had they left us alone as Americans, we would have come together naturally as we were doing prior to the civil rights movement. It was a horrible mistake to do that, to force busing and all that. It never worked, and it never will work. It would be like me trying to get you to love, if I were your father, for example, I would try to get you to love the woman that I wanted you to love. That would never work. You and that woman have to come together naturally in order for that to work. So we never should have had forced busing. And real love don't mean that you leave your borders open. Matter of fact, it means that you shut the borders down because you would know that enemies are coming across the borders. You don't want illegal aliens coming in. They're coming in with different so-called principles or ideas which does not relate to what this country is about. I think it's a horrible mistake that they brought in all these different races from different countries. Those people's values are different than the American values. And so that's why I'm warning white people not to go with the color thing, but go with what is right, because you're going to lose if you do. Those people, the children of the lie, they're in control right now. And the only way to defeat them is speaking up, taking action in the right way.
Right. I mean, I think there's kind of a few ideas, though, that it's like, first of all, the children of the lie. I'm gonna use that. I like that. I think we're gonna adopt that saying, but I think that there's a thing to it that it's like, I mean, you do say like that. Multiculturalism, for example, doesn't work. Like, you would agree with that, right?
Right.
Okay, and that's fine. But then you also say, don't focus on race. And I think that that concept, because it's like, if we don't focus on race, if that's not important, then why can't multiculturalism work? I think that part of a healthy society is accepting that race is real, that people prefer and gravitate towards others of their own race. That is how people naturally choose to associate, given the freedom to do so. And therefore, there is nothing wrong with building nations around races. That is perfectly fine. That is, in fact, preferable. And again, it's not about hatred. If we want to create hatred, the best way to create hatred would be to bring a bunch of people of different races and cultures together in one space and tell them you have to share this space. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I do, but I'm not saying, if I can make it clear, I'm not saying that race, like, the black race or the white race is not important, but racism is nothing. That's an illusion. And rather than focusing on that lie, we need to focus on the truth. And the truth is, the children of the lie are wrong.
Absolutely,
and if you notice,
they're wrong. But
if you notice that the children of the lie come in all different colors, male and female, and they're all evil. And so they represent.
There's a few very consistent elements to the children of the lie, I think, that can be kind of identified.
Yep.
I think DeMarcus might know what I'm talking about.
They serve the same devil. You can find all different races involved in the same type of corruption, the same type of deceit, the same type of everything. So race itself does exist, but it's a passerby thing. It doesn't last. But a man or a woman character does. If you love what's right with all your heart, soul, and might, along with nothing else, that lasts forever, and it takes you through life. It gives you the courage to speak up. It gives you the courage to fight back. It gives you the courage to build strong families. It gives you the courage to build a great nation, such as the founders did, the forefathers did, when they created the greatest country on this side of heaven. The problem is that white people and some black people most black people turned away from those principles and gave in to the children of the lie, and now we are suffering for it.
Well, I totally agree that we have let the children of the lie take over our society. But I think the thing that we're never going to agree on, or perhaps maybe we'd have to just keep talking about it, is that I believe that if I'm being attacked in a certain way, that I have a right to defend myself from that attack. I'm not being attacked. I'm not being attacked as I'm being attacked on a number of fronts: heterosexual, white,
right,
etc. Those are the places on which white people are being attacked, and I think that whites have a right to defend ourselves as whites. Like we are. You would agree. Like there's this massive anti-white propaganda out there. There's this narrative from the media, and that we have to counter that and tell them, like, no, that's not the case. And I think that many people, the alt-right has concluded that white people, in order to defend ourselves from these attacks, we have a right to sort of collectivize, to get together as whites to fend off these attacks.
But it's not going to work.
Well,
you should want and back the men and women of evil, because just white people standing together fighting alone is not going to work. There are men and women who believe that white people have a right to live where they want, marry who they want, discriminate when they want. You have a right to all those things, and you're not wrong for doing that. But if you separate into your whiteness, you're just going to create. Now we're going to have whites, blacks, Hispanics, and whatever else in groups hating one another. And that's not going to work. But if you stand for what is right, that will work. You have a right to be free to do and say whatever you want. And when the children of the lie call you white, they say this white man is a racist and this white man want to hold you back. You have to realize they're blind and they can't see, and they're pointing out your color because they want others to hate your color, hate you because of your color. But if men and women had character, they would see it's not you, but it's something else inside of you that's driving you to do right or drive you to do wrong. The children of the lie are blinded. That's why they're so shallow, and they're constantly pointing at the exterior and not the interior. And then the people who are following these people are blind as well. They don't realize that they're being lied to. Most black people, not all, but most, cannot see that their true enemies are the Congressional Black Caucus, Jesse Jackson, Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, Barack Obama, the fallen Messiah, Big Mama Michelle, and most of the black preachers. Those are the enemies of black people and not white folks.
Well, I just want to say real quick. I mean, the conservatives, we call them cucks. They've been trying this whole, you need love in your heart, and you could be from any race. We could all get together, and we just got to have the same principles and religion. And they've been trying that for since the 1960s, and they've been failing at every step.
Love is. They don't know what love is. I'm not talking about that kind of love. The type of love I'm talking about is a light unto your feet. It's a love that allows you to see, but not hate what you see. Deal with injustice, but don't hate injustice. The type of love I'm talking about give you the freedom to say yes or no, to call it as you see it. It's the same type of love that allows you to live and do whatever you want and not impose yourself upon other people. It's not that love that they're talking about is love that's in a fallen state. They're trying to force you to accept and do whatever it is they want you to do, and live and act the way that they want you to live and act. I'm not talking about that kind of love. That's not love. That kind of love comes from hate. It's a fallen state of love. It's not the real deal.
Well, why is it that this type of love and this idea that you don't focus on race is only it's only put out there to white countries, to the populations of white countries? Why is that? I mean, there's not anybody.
That's a good question.
There's not anybody that I know of that's going to tell the Jews over in Israel. There are a few outliers, but the mainstream opinion is not that the Jews in Israel should not have an ethno-state. And nobody is trying to force flood a whole bunch of white people into Mexico or a whole bunch of non-Africans into Africa. It just doesn't happen. And
Right.
it's a white country. It doesn't matter where that white country is. We're told that we alone are not allowed to focus on race, that there's either some magic soil here that if people are born on this, then they're American or English or German or whatever, or that there's some magical document, and that if we just teach these people, if we make sure before they come in here, it doesn't matter what race they are, if we make sure that they understand the Constitution, why, we'll have a million budding brown Thomas Jeffersons coming in here. And that has never been the case.
It's never going to be the case.
And the founders knew that it wouldn't be the case because they founded an explicitly white nationalist nation, the first one that broadly white nationalist in history. The same men who signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution passed the first Immigration Act of the United States that lasted for a long, long time. And it said to be a citizen of these United States, you had to be a free white person of good character. That's the Immigration Act of 1790. And this great nation was built as a white nation, and it was built as a republic. And you're never going to have a republic, an actual republic that is functional when you have all these different groups, and people can blame it on identity politics or whatever, but that's just going to exist, and it's been proven throughout history that it's going to exist. Every great nation or empire started off as a one race nation or empire, and once it started a multicultural experiment that among other things quickly led to its downfall.
Romans, Ottomans, yep.
Yeah, so I think the point here is that like I agree with you that people need to be better people. They need to stop listening to lies. They need to stop buying into what the media is selling them and the children of the lie who we know run the media. We have to stop listening to that, and we have to work on developing our inner selves. But see, to us on the alt-right, the inner struggle and the outer struggle are one and the same. They're part of each other. And as I said, the struggle for the nation, the struggle for the white nation, the white nationalist struggle, we struggle together. We whites join together based on our commonalities, and we struggle together, and that builds character, that builds men. And that is like kind of what we're doing, and we are focused on right. We are focused on being morally upright. We are focused on men being correct in their behavior towards women, to developing families, developing moral character. We talk about all of that. We don't tolerate immoral behavior in our own ranks. And so the point of it is that there's a lot of lost white men out there, and we tell them, hey, we have something for you. You can join us. You can be part of our struggle. We struggle for our nation, and then also you develop yourself in the course of that. And I understand why maybe as a black man you might find that to be not the direction you'd like to see whites go in, but I don't think that, as I said, I think the best way to prevent real hatred between people is to allow people to develop as themselves, as their own nations, their own races, separate from each other. Because you agreed to it before, the idea that if we brought every race and nation into one place, all that's going to create is hatred. I mean, the Tower of Babel, not, to get biblical if you want, the Tower of Babel, there's a story there that makes sense, which is that you bring everybody together and nobody knows it doesn't make any sense. So you can't really have this multicultural, multiracial society, and there's nothing wrong with, and nothing hateful about wanting a nation of your own people. And in fact, you can best relate to other people when you have that.